In this lesson, I'm going to explain adjustment layers. So to follow along, go to Working Files, Projects, and scrolling down to 1501 Adjustment Layers. The adjustment layer feature is new to Premiere Pro CS6. It's been around for a while in After Effects and Photoshop. An adjustment layer is a transparent layer on which you can put effects that will affect all clips below it in the sequence that are visible. There are a number of uses for adjustment layers. Let me show you a few in this lesson. First order of business is to make an adjustment layer. And to do that, you go to the new item icon here, click on it, and then click on adjustment layer. The dialog box says you want to make it the size of your sequence, and you say, you bet. Now the thing is, if you have multiple sequences of different sizes, then you do need to make a different adjustment layer for each of those sequences. So let's say you've got one for high def and one for standard definition. You want to change the name of the adjustment layer so you know which one you're using. So here we have only one sequence, so we need only one adjustment layer. So let's drag this above these three clips here. Or drag it on over there. By default, it's 5 seconds long, like adding a still. And then you can drag it out to whatever length you want, and it won't affect the way it plays back. It's transparent, so it looks like nothing's happened. What's cool about the adjustment layer in this case is that you can apply effects to this single adjustment layer, and they will affect all three of these clips, or any number of clips that are under the adjustment layer. So I'm just going to do a little tonality and color work on this. This clip is already fine. The tonality is good. I've already checked it with the waveform scope, but I just want to make it a little bit higher contrast and just make it a little bit warmer, just to show you how this works. So let's go over to Effects, click on that tab, go down to my color correction group here. I've already got this clip selected, it's active, so I just double click on Luma Curve and double click on Fast Color Corrector, the two effects we go to when we want to do some color correction work. First order of business is just to give it a little more contrast, so I just pull this up a touch like that, pull this down a touch like that, maybe brighten it up just a hair like that. There we go. Now I want to fix the color just a little bit, so I'm going to close that down and focus on making it just a little bit warmer here, like that. And now we're done. The thing is, we did that to this clip, plus this clip, plus this clip, all with one layer. Very simple. Two effects applied to all three clips at once. That's a real powerful feature of the adjustment layer, and probably is its primary use. But let's move on down the line here for a couple more uses. We have a sign in front of this horse, and what I'd like to do is have the area under the sign be out of focus. An adjustment layer can let you do that. So let's add the adjustment layer to this little collection. But the thing is, I want the sign to be above the adjustment layer and have the adjustment layer only affect the horse. If I put the adjustment layer above both of them, it would make them both blurry if I change the effect for that. So I pull this guy up a notch like that, go get the adjustment layer out of the project panel, and bring that over here under the first one, above the bottom one, like that. Stretch it out to the length of the clip, and now we're ready to go. I want to apply the Gaussian blur to this adjustment layer. So I'm going to go over to Effects and go on down, or in this case up to Video Effects and Blur and Sharpen, and drag Gaussian blur over, or just double click on it since it's selected. There we go, we've added Gaussian blur. Now I'm going to change the blurriness, and it's going to affect the entire clip down below here. Repeat edge pixels to take care of those edges. And the thing is, I don't want to affect the entire thing. So what you can do is you can say, let's just affect part of it by changing the size, the scale of the adjustment layer. So I've got that active. Click on motion. You can see the motion handles there. I'm going to go open this up a little bit and turn off uniform scale and bring in the width a bit, like so. Slide it over like that. Even off the edge a little bit like that. I can maybe pull the top up a little bit so you can make sure we cover everything nicely. And there you go. We've made just that section blurry. If I want to change the blending mode, I can use that as well. The way blending mode works here when you're working with the adjustment layer, it's as if you took a copy of this clip, put it above it, and apply the blending mode to the copy. And it makes the clips look a little more dramatic in some cases. So I'm going to apply a blending mode to this adjustment layer and show you how that works. So I go to opacity for the adjustment layer. That's what's open up right now. Change the blending mode, let's say, to vivid light. And you can see what it does to the two clips together. It kind of obliterates the blur, but you can see that it does blend the two together as if there are two clips there. You see there's a little bit of blur there, but not much. So if I go back to normal, then the blur will be much more obvious. One little drawback here, if I click away so you don't see the lines there, the drawback is that the edge is really hard, because that's the edge of the frame. And I can't make the edge blurry here when I use an adjustment layer that is a frame like this. There are ways around that, and I'm going to show you that in just a few moments. Let's move on down the line here. I have this little background clip. What I'd like to do is put an adjustment layer above it and have it go into motion, just highlighting part of this clip, just kind of like we did over here, but have it move. So take the adjustment layer out of the project panel, Bring it on over, stretch it out like that. I'm going to change its size, just as we did before. So I click on it to make it active, click on motion. Let's say uncheck uniform scale. Drag this in a bit like so. Maybe make it a little bit taller so you cover everything really cleanly like that and bring it over to the side like this. So far, nothing's happened, right? But I want to change the color of this. So I'm going to take my current time indicator to the beginning of the clip, pressing the up arrow. There we go. I'm going to apply an effect to that. So we'll apply the fast color corrector, for example. Go to effects, going down to the color correction group, double click. And I want to change the color here. We're going to go to the color wheel, pull this guy out. See, we're affecting the color there like that. I'm going to rotate this around. We'll keyframe the balance angle. So I'll turn that on. We'll go to the end of the clip, press the down arrow key. I'll change this to, let's say, 2x. So it'll go around a couple of times, a little bit more than 2 times because we didn't start at 0. But that's okay. We're not trying to make a looping thing here. Something like that. You can see that. And I also want to put the adjustment layer in motion. So I go back up to the beginning, up arrow, go to the motion. We're going to keyframe position. Go to the end of the clip, page down, back 1 frame so you can see where we are. Drag this across like that. We'll put this guy in motion across the clip. Something like that. So you can put an adjustment layer in motion, maintaining that rectangular shape, that hard edge rectangular shape. Now if I want to, let's say, change the blending mode on that, I can. Have the blending mode be something else. Vivid light is kind of my go-to thing when I'm trying to do something dramatic like this. That's one way to do it. Okay, I mentioned that we had this kind of hard edge thing here. I want to try to fix that. So I'm going to go get a title that I made. Now we haven't talked about how to make titles yet, so I'm just going to go get this one that I made for this project. So I've got dressage instructor, dressage rider, and dressage sign mask. I want to put that guy below the sign because I'm going to turn it into an adjustment layer. So I take my little mask over here like this, pull it over. It's just a rectangle. If I open it up inside the titler, I just made a rectangle here inside the titler. And we're going to use that as what they call a mask. We want to apply, let's say, a blur to that. So I'm going to apply a blur to that as an adjustment layer. So I'm going to right-click on this and say, let's make this guy an adjustment layer. Now, so far, nothing happens because it just turns invisible, as you'd expect. I'm going to apply the blur to it. And it's going to look just like the other one looked, but you'll see what we're going to do here in a second. Going up to blur, going to Gaussian blur. Double-click on it. There's Gaussian blur. We're going to blur it. Let's repeat the edges. So it looks like that hard edge thing again. But I'm going to convert this little title into a shadow. Double-click on it. And over here, right now it's what they call fill. I'm going to convert it to a shadow. And shadow gives you the option of softening the edges of it. You turn this little guy on so you can sort of see it a little better. I'm going to spread it out to 100. That gives a little bit of a soft edge. Not as much as I'd like, but at least it's something. And I'm going to increase the opacity like that. So you can barely see it has this little soft edge there. Now I'm going to go back, and now we have a soft edge to the edge of this little adjustment layer by switching it over to a shadow. It's not a dramatically soft edge, but that's about the best I can do under those circumstances. Okay, let's move on down the line here. Let's say you want to cover up someone's identity, or at least highlight some area of a clip. We're going to conceal this dressage instructor's identity. So I'm going to go over here to the project panel. And one of the drawbacks of an adjustment layer is that it's always rectangular, right? Here we're going to make it an oval. Very simple by using just another title. So I'm going to go to the dressage instructor mask, drag it over to her like that. A little bit longer than we need it to be. I'll shrink it down like that. Now we can see this little thing on top of her. I'm going to change the size of it using motion. Go to motion, open that up, uncheck uniform scale, make it a little taller like that, a little bit wider, change its position. Now when I built this title, I tried to build it near the anchor point where it's centered like that. It makes it work better when you're trying to change size and shape over time. Here we're not worrying about changing it over time, but nevertheless, that's what you can do. And as you adjust these things, sometimes it's hard to tell if you got them already lined up. You can open up opacity a bit and drop opacity down for a moment and sort of see how you're doing. Okay, we're done there. Now I'm going to convert this to an adjustment layer. Right click. You are now an adjustment layer. And away it goes, right? But now we're going to apply blur to it. So go back, go to effects, Gaussian blur, increase the blurriness like so. There you go. You can do that. If we want to really go hog wild here, we can add mosaic to it. Type in mosaic. And let me scroll up to mosaic. There's mosaic in and out. Those are presets, but this is the mosaic effect here. So add mosaic. And you can see how that works. We're going to make mosaic, other than the 10-10 default, we'll increase it so it's not so blocky, something like that. So that's one way to conceal someone's identity. But again, it's got that hard edge to it, which is one of the features there of doing this little issue with adjustment layers. So again, I would go back to the titler. And this is the original shape, so don't worry about the fact that it's circular. I'm going to convert it to a shadow, like that. Turn off the fill. I'm going to make the shadow opacity 100%. I'm going to spread it out to 100, and that gives it a softer edge. That'll show up here now, with a little softer edge around her now. Alrighty, and one last thing here. You can do the same kind of a thing and follow motion. So I've got this little title mask already applied and already in motion to follow that rider. And I have it change size over time. Also have the opacity on here, but it's changing as well. So when we click on this, you can see all the motion keyframes I put in there for that to save you the trouble doing that. I'm going to reset opacity and get rid of the keyframes. I'm going to get a little message. You're going to delete keyframes. That's okay. Now the opacity is back to 100%.
There you go.
And the same thing as before, I want to apply, let's say, something different to this one. I want the background here to be dark. So I've got the Luma key already applied to it. That's the normal brightness. Make the background dark like that. I'm going to make this rider bright. So I'm going to apply Luma Curve to the rider and make the rider bright. So let me just change this into an adjustment layer. Right click, adjustment layer. And now I'm going to take my Luma Curve and lift things up a bit to highlight the rider against the black background. And I did this with the track matte when I was demonstrating track mattes, but you can see you can do something similar here with this adjustment layer. Again, it's got that hard edge, and so you know what to do now, right? You just open it up in the titler and convert that from fill to shadow, get it to 100%, and spread it out as far as you can. That gives it just a little bit of a soft edge to it. And now when you go around, you can follow her. That'll highlight her like that. And you can change the scale and what have you using an adjustment layer, which works pretty darn well. So that is a rundown on a whole bunch of uses for adjustment layers.